Hey, converted man here. How are you doing? So, the topic has come up again, as many topics circulate, of default atheism, and also the topic of that you can't change what you believe. And so, I wanted to talk a little bit about these two topics and what I think about what they're trying to say, because I think that it might be true but useless, or it might be something that has some nuance to it. So let's start with the statement of that atheism is the default position. It's kind of odd phrasing because atheism isn't a position, so to speak. It's a lack of a position. I don't believe in God. Okay, well, you might say, well, but no, atheism is that there is no God. Okay, well, at some point, the two are almost identical. If you don't know about a concept, then for you, that concept isn't a thing. So you might as well say there isn't that. You don't know that there isn't, but you don't know that there is either. You've never been introduced to the idea. So leaving that kind of to the side, because the natural language can get funny there. It's like, well, what does it mean to be atheist? Does it mean I don't believe, or does it mean there is no God? Or, it's like, well, yes, both are correct. But however you want to put it, the idea that the starting position or the neutral position is a non-belief system. I should only do edited videos, obviously. This only happens when I want to do serious stuff, I swear. Or maybe I'll only notice it when I do serious stuff. So if we imagine, because we can't really do some sort of test on human population, that wouldn't be ethically sound, but we can certainly imagine the scenario that I want to present. So if we have a kid from the moment that they're born until the moment that they can speak and interact with us, come up with their own ideas, there's a whole lot between that time where the whoever's taking care of them, whoever's around them, is speaking about a wide variety of things that may be bringing the child to church, or having religious practices or spiritual practices around this child. And the kid's going to absorb that. We know that. Now, in a non-theistic, non-religious household, a secular household, where none of these practices are done, the word God isn't spoken, religion isn't talked about, other things are, but that's just not even a part of the people's lives, then that child is not going to have those things be absorbed into them. Okay? So would that child go on to be an atheist or a theist? Well, who knows? It depends. And vice versa. Every individual is going to be slightly different. Somebody born in a household that was raised fundamentalist, say, and spent years of their life devoted to that, and then one day they come to find out, no, evolution is true. This shatters their view, and now they don't believe anymore. Or you could have it be that somebody raised completely secular, never heard about God until way late in life, and just thought, wow, this is profound and amazing, and they become a pantheist or something. Either way can happen. But those would probably be on the extreme ends of the bell curve, because what's more likely is whatever you grow up around, both within your immediate family circle and the social society circle, because that's going to influence you as well. That's going to have some sort of meaningful impact. So in that sense, you can't really find somebody who's at a neutral start. You're not going to find somebody that's a blank slate, because everybody's going to come packaged, if you will, with whatever their people that are around them have done. So if people are normally sacrificing goats, that person's going to think that that's pretty normal. If that's if only in the family is where that's done, then, and they see that the rest of the world doesn't do this, then they might think, maybe sacrificing goats isn't normal. Or they might think that we're the only ones that get it. We're the only ones that understand this. And for whatever reason, the rest of the world doesn't, because of cognitive dissonance. They might form a justification for why they're the only family that is sacrificing goats. So it depends on brain chemistry and brain makeup at that point, and some psychology there, perhaps. So still, whatever the broadly speaking, whatever's in the main bell curve, the average of what you experience, what's around you, that's probably going to be what you think is true, or you're more likely to believe that it's true. It's easier to accept. If everyone in society is sacrificing goats and nobody has a problem with it, then it's going to be probably really easy for you to sacrifice goats and not worry about it. Now, it might be that you see a problem with it and reject it and object to it, and perhaps even are so willing to be gung-ho about that cause that society itself turns against you and maybe even kills you, because you're a threat to society, because you don't accept the goat sacrifices. But that's going to be really rare. Most people are going to go along with it, especially if life is on the line. So we can see then that over time, societies are going to develop that may or may not contain beliefs that are not necessarily true or justified in reality, but are justified because the society has said this is, everyone agrees with this, and so that's keeping us all together. So we better keep doing that, otherwise we'll all break apart. We have a unified hypothesis, we have a unified belief, we have a unified theory that keeps us all similar enough to each other so that we can be a big group. And that's all part of group dynamics. And so is the default state then non-belief? Well, again, if we examine it and said, well, if we didn't talk about God, we didn't talk about any given belief, and I'm just going to use the goat thing because that came to my mind. The goat sacrificing, let's just say that that's what it was. That belief, sacrificing goats is good. That's all. It doesn't do anything, it doesn't produce rain or anything. It's just, it's good. That's it. That's the consensus. That's the belief. And everywhere in your society that you look, and your family, everybody's doing this. Maybe other parts of the world aren't. They're sacrificing cows, and maybe you think that that's vile and despicable and disgusting. But they're not sacrificing goats. My word, those people, there's something wrong with them. But I don't care about that. Maybe they have some arguments. Maybe they have some philosophy. Maybe they have some books that say why they're right and your system is wrong. It doesn't matter. I'm not even going to pay it. I'm not going to read that. Or maybe you think, that's interesting. I'll read it, and then I'll tell you why it's wrong. And then you have goat sacrificing apologetics. And you have cow sacrificing apologetics. And then maybe you have a very few people in that society, because it's free enough to allow people to have different opinions and not kill them. But you have people that say, you know what? I don't think sacrificing animals is good at all. We're not eating them. At least we should eat them. We're just killing them. That's all we're doing. It doesn't. Why? Because it's just, we're told that it's good, but that's not a good enough reason to think that it is good. And these pesky non-goat sacrificing, non-cow sacrificing is make up a very small section of the population. But why? And they'll say, well, it's the default position. And the others will say, you're nuts, because look at it. Everybody's doing this except for you guys. You guys are in the minority. It's like you're in the bottom 3% of the world. That's nothing. The rest of us are killing goats or cows or something. We sacrifice some animal. Maybe it's a different animal. Okay, those guys are sacrificing squid. Those guys sacrifice crickets. I don't get that. And, but everybody sacrifices something. You guys don't want to sacrifice at all. You don't get it. You don't understand it. Maybe some of you did, but now you've left, and it just doesn't make sense to the rest of us. Everyone here is on the same side. We all agree that sacrificing animals is good, but you guys reject it. How are you the default position? And you say, well, because you were raised in a society where believing in this sacrifice was valued. If you hadn't been taught that, what would you come to believe? Well, you have to think about that. If you weren't taught about sacrificing goats, you're more likely to be one of our kids then. Because we don't teach our kids that that's a thing. We don't say that. We might or might not say that it's wrong, by the way. But maybe we all teach our kids that they can decide for themselves if they think it's right or wrong. Or maybe you have a separate subsection of the society where they do teach their kids that it's wrong. But what about the ones that say we teach our kids to believe whatever they want to believe, and they happen to think that believing that this is true is a bad idea? Okay, but they're not told to believe in the goat thing. They're not indoctrinated, as we might call it. So their belief, though, you could still say, but you're not teaching them about the sacrifice. You're in that case, you're teaching them sacrifice is bad. Okay, in this one, you're not teaching them that it's good, but that's also a teaching. Not teaching something is a teaching. So there is no blank state. There is no way, because if we don't teach the kid, then they're never going to learn how to talk. If nobody interacts with them, then they're never going to be, able to be. And you go, there you go. If you didn't interact with them at all, they'd have no belief. They'd have no way to, eventually, I guess it could be a person. They'd have to gain interaction, but you don't start out that way. You start out at this you don't believe anything one way or the other when you just start out. So that's not really atheism. Maybe somebody could say that's really not disbelief in the sacrificing of goats and cows or animals. That's something else, but it's not that. It's different. Well, why? Why is it different? How is it different? There's a nuance there, and well, I don't know what it is, but it's there, and so then you have this whole argument about if it's the default position or not. Is it useful? I don't know, because that's really hard to determine, because it might be true. It might be the case that, yes, technically speaking, everybody's born in this kind of blank slate-ish, although it's not quite true because it's a half-truth, because you're not really born with blank slate. You are born already having certain things because of your DNA, so goodness only knows how much you're already born with, like the ability to learn, okay, but maybe you're born with certain desires already geared in your brain because of natural selection. So there is no blank slate at the very bottom of everything. You might say that. You say, okay, yeah, but I'm saying, like, in general, I'm trying to speak maybe a little bit metaphorically that you start out, essentially, you can be molded Okay, fine. But that's still not the blank slate of not believing that sacrificing animals is good, or not being taught about sacrificing animals, or being taught that you get to choose between sacrificing animals or not, because all of those are also teaching. So it's still not, we still can't get to the point where we find a person that we can say, here's this blank slot individual as our example. Okay, fine. We spent all this time debating about this, and we haven't really addressed the point at all. We haven't talked about sacrificing the animals. We talked about whether or not you started as a blank slate. So was that whole debate useful? Well, it might have been useful to get to whatever the truth is. And it might, and there's a value to that if you care, and I care about truth. So to me, I find it of a value to do a debate, but not just do a debate, but really do a critical analysis, really looking at the problem and looking at what it is that you're thinking about and talking about, and say, okay, let me attack it from this angle. Let somebody else come in at this angle. What do you mean by blank slate? What does this mean? The idea, I get it. The idea is that we are born as programmable entities, if you will, and that your social structure, whether it's parents or whatever role models, whatever you want to call it, the interactions you have with other humans, that's going to shape you in some way, and then the overarching society that's around you is going to also shape you in some way. So where you're born really matters. That's going to be a big part of the sort of person that you're going to be. If you think it's not true, well, there's been identical twin studies. This is, and you go nature versus nurture, where the two identical twins, so both have the same DNA, and they happen to be separated from each other. And so one was raised this way, the other was raised a different way, and then they'll wind up getting similar jobs, similar wives or husbands or whatever. Like their dang thing is like it's mapped for them. So goodness only knows what it is that we can choose anyway. Maybe in the sum total of reality, we're born with dispositions that aim us one way or the other. Maybe certain people are born towards being able to be more religious or believe in the animal sacrifices. And then there's going to be those that are born towards disliking the animal sacrifices. And then there's those that are going to be between that could choose both because their brain is a different way. And maybe there's another category. Goodness knows. So nobody's born as a blank slate because that's not how evolution works. So we won. We got to the truth of the matter. Okay. Great. Now can we finally talk about whether or not it's a good idea to sacrifice the dang animals? Yeah, okay. But did we get to the heart of the matter? Now that's up to you, my audience. You have to decide that. You have to tell me, because I have my own ideas. And you have your ideas. And we have to interact with each other. We have to say, well, okay, this blank slate idea, I don't like it. Because, yeah, it's true, but no, it's also not true. And so at what level are we going to say that it's true? And what use does it have, ultimately? Well, the use might be that you can't or you won't believe in this thing, this God or the animal sacrifices being good until you're taught that. Or you won't believe that unless everybody around you also believes it. But that's not necessarily true either, because somewhere, some nitwit, some genius, however you want to put it, said, hey, we gotta start sacrificing goats. Why? Shut up. Sacrifice those goats. Okay, it's good. Yeah. Somebody came up with the idea, so it can spontaneously, manifest. Or at least it seems like it's spontaneous to the rest of us, if you will. So Maybe it came from other earlier ideas, though. See, there really isn't anything new. It's just modifications of what already existed. And we can see that and say, well, that's God, isn't it? You say, well, no. How does that fit God? Well, because we know that other creatures can do things. So they're on the Africa plains. You can imagine, I always imagine this one guy, well, not always, obviously. I imagine this one guy, and he's walking around, and suddenly he's hit in the head by a rock, and he looks around. Immediately, his brain's going to think human, because that's he knows that the other humans are around, and that maybe they're they might not be. Maybe we don't know if they're friendly or not. They've left us alone, but goodness knows, I know that humans can throw rocks. I don't look around, I see no humans. I kind of hide in the grass. I see, and then I think, oh, monkeys can also throw. I think monkeys were in Africa. I don't know. Maybe they weren't. I don't know. But that they can throw. So they look, they see no animals that can throw. Maybe they see some animals, but they know those animals can't throw rocks. And they go, huh, well, something must have thrown it. Well, that's the wrong conclusion. But to his mind, he doesn't know that that's the wrong conclusion. Because that's evolutionary survival. I assume agency. And so he goes back to his village and he tells everybody that this rock fell on my head from the sky. There must be something up there throwing rocks at us. Of course, he watched that movie, The Gods Are Crazy. The first one. The second one wasn't very good. But the first one, fairly good. Kind of long, but pretty good as far as this weird thing appears, and I think it's God. This rock comes down from above. I look up, and I think something with the agency must have thrown that. Now, in reality, it was some volcano miles away that had erupted and thrown all these rocks into the air, and finally one, landed on him. And it was very small enough not to, knock him out or kill him or hurt him significantly. But that's where it came from, really. But he'll never know that. And also the conclusion that he had of it must be somebody, it must be an agent, that's the wrong conclusion, because he doesn't know that. It might be an agent, it might not be. And the conclusion should be, I should just say, well, this is interesting and I don't know why it happened. But that's not how he thinks. He's too early in humanity to think that way. So before you know it, you have a rock throwing God. So the blank slate was that before then, he didn't believe in a rock throwing God. But after that event, he did. You might say, well, see, it was the default position that they didn't believe in this until something happened that changed their beliefs. And maybe that's the way that we want to view this particular idea. Or maybe not. Okay. So, I'll let you, of course, well, I hope that I would encourage you to interact with that idea more in the comments. I see many of you in chat, appreciate chat, but if you don't comment on this once it's an actual video, it doesn't help my channel to be noticed by YouTube. So even if you're chatting now, after it's done, wait a couple moments, minute-ish, and you just say hi. Doesn't matter what you post something so that YouTube knows that you watched and commented, and that will help me in a little way. I don't ask for money. This is all I'm asking for. Okay, anyways. Hate doing that, but you have to. You have to. Anyways. Let's talk about you can't choose your beliefs. Well, what does that statement mean? Well, this is a lobster. Oh, come on, deconverted man. This isn't a lobster. No, this is a lobster. Do you believe this is a lobster? No, probably not. I would assume that you don't. I mean, if you do, well, you also owe me $1 million. Do you believe that? No. Well, why not? I said it. So, am I lying? Well, maybe I named this thing lobster. Yeah, but that's not what you meant. Come on. When you say something is a thing, you're not saying that this is the thing that I've named lobster. Here's my plastic frog that I named lobster. Well, yeah, but that's different than saying here's my plastic lobster. Well, no, it's not a lobster; it's a frog. And well, and you could say, well, it's a toad, or well, what is it? What is it? What kind of frog is it? I don't know. Well, is it even plastic? I mean, I can't tell from here with just a webcam, and well. But it's not a lobster, damn it. It's a frog. Believe it's a lobster. You can't just... Okay. Now, maybe you can. Now, that would be amazing. Because somebody out there is bound to have that ability, right? Brains are amazing. So somebody somewhere, maybe they can go, yep, I believe that's true. And then go, well, I'm tired of believing it's true. I don't believe it's true anymore. Maybe they can do that. Not me, not I can't. But over time, if you really worked at it, maybe you could convince yourself in your own brain to believe that this is a lobster. It'd be hard. Maybe it would take years. Maybe you would never get there. But maybe you could brainwash, for lack of a better word, yourself into believing that it was. But you can't just instantly change that belief. And it wouldn't matter if I threatened you and said, I will do harm to you, friends, family, whatever, in the world. It doesn't matter. You can't just change your belief. You'll say, yeah, I believe. You'll agree verbally, but you won't really believe it because you can't just do that. Okay, that's fair. Can I choose? Can I decide that I want to believe that's a lobster? Maybe. Like, if I really wanted to. But see, now I have to want to. So do I want to? No. Yeah, I don't really want to mess with my brain like that. Just for the scientific test to see, I wonder if I could convince myself of this. Because I don't really want to spend that time and energy trying to do it. And it's also subjective. Maybe I could, record a data of it, make videos about it. Day 2, still not a lobster. Day 3, I'm still trying. It's still not working. I don't know. But you could go your whole life and it never would change. And then, it's like, well, I tried my whole life to believe that it was a lobster. I just couldn't do it. My brain just wouldn't accept it. Because I knew ultimately it wasn't true. And even though I tried to convince myself, tried to trick myself, it just didn't work. That's not the same as God, though, is it? Well, let's figure that out, or try to figure that out. There is a thing. This is, okay. And this thing, you can't see it. You can't touch it. You can't smell it. You can't taste it. But it exists. Okay. You can't perceive it with your senses at all. But it still exists. And I'm not talking about God. I'm talking about a thing that actually exists that you cannot detect with your senses. There's a number of things that fit that category. A whole bunch. To some extent, the small things usually would wind up in that category. Like, well, particles. A particle, a molecule. I probably wouldn't be able to smell it, taste it, touch it, whatever, because it's too damn small. It's there, but it has to be big enough so that I perceive it. If it's too small, I can't perceive it. It has to be large enough for me to interact with it at a level that my body will recognize it and do something about it. So, on that level, how do I know that it's there? Since I couldn't perceive it with any of my normal human functionality. Well, there has to be then some way to test that it's there. And so, working together with other humans, maybe we can come up with a way to test whether this idea is true or not. And maybe we can even build a machine that will let us visualize the dang thing. Because that is pretty darn important to be able to know what we're talking about. So let's say that we did that. Now we can talk about it. Now we can say, not only is this abstract idea that I said exists, and we can't, it's just, yeah, it exists, but I'm not going to prove it to anybody. Now I can actually demonstrate it through this test, through this process, through using this machinery, using electric microscopes or what have you. Great, but that's some scientist somewhere off in La La Land. That's not me. I don't have electric microscope, so I can never verify that that's there. So now I have to trust that that person, whoever that is, isn't lying to me. So I still ultimately have to trust somebody at some level that the thing that you said is true is really true because I can't verify it. And I say, yeah, that's a good reason to be a skeptic. But some say, yeah, that's faith, and I might as well keep the faith that I have. What's the difference? And I had that conversation just the other day where the faith from the person of faith is perceived to be equal, is you also have this faith just in a different way, and maybe you have more faith than I do, and that's scary. I'm comfortable with the faith that I have, and so I see no need to change it. What do I gain? I don't know. Maybe the truth, but that's not enough. Maybe it's not good enough. Because, yeah, I value the truth, but I'm also, like, really scared. Or maybe I'm not scared, but maybe it just seems like too much work. Or whatever your feeling is. Or maybe it has nothing to do with emotions at all. Maybe you know, you just, you know, it just is. Maybe your brain can't do it. Like, you can't force yourself to think, oh, I woke up today and I decided that there was a God. I woke up today, there's no God. Now, I'd love to challenge the theists and say, try to go a week, a month, a year without thinking about God and see if it works. But then how would we ever check in with them? They'd have to isolate themselves and try. It's like, have you ever tried to not think of a thing? Then of course you're going to think of the thing. It's like in fact, there's this whole game that I think 4chan made it up. I don't know. That's where I learned about it from. But it's called The Game, all capital letters. And so you've just lost the game. So the game works like this. Everyone is playing the game. The goal of the game is to forget that you're playing the game. And if you ever think about the game, then you've lost. And now you must announce, oh, I lost the game, which also causes everyone else to lose the game. There's only one way to win, which is get permanent memory loss or something. You can't win that game. There is no winning. But it's a beautiful meme. It's a beautiful non-game that encapsulates this idea that it's really hard to not think about something. And in that sense, do you have a choice? If maybe you didn't know about the game until I explained it, or maybe you knew and you were like, damn it, I just lost the game because you've been playing the game and you hadn't thought about it for goodness knows how long. And then the minute I brought it up, they're like, "Oh no, you should have lurked more, deconverted man." No, you know, and you're like, "Well, it's stupid, but I was playing it, and I just forgot that I was playing it, so I was winning, and I didn't even know I was winning." I wonder how long it will be till I forget about it again, because it's so trivial, it's so nonsense, right? It's such a little thing. Can you stop believing that it's real? Can you stop believing that the game exists? I just told you about it. Well, maybe it didn't come from 4chan. Maybe it came from somewhere else. I could be lying about the details or mistaken in the details. That's where I remember it from, but that doesn't mean that that's where it came from, and I can't prove that I remembered it from that place, and I can't prove that that's. I can maybe at best show that that's the place where it was at some point in time, but I can't prove what I said was true in some way. You have to, at some level, think that I'm telling you the truth, and this is what we call the social contract. Well, that's faith, somebody might say. I have to have faith in you that you're not lying to me. I'm like, yeah. Is that faith? Or, I mean, are we equivocating at this point? But do you have the choice in believing me or not? At some level, maybe, kind of, sort of. Because you could say, no, I'm going to be super skeptical of all the things you've taught me well, deconverted man. I will be I doubt everything you're saying. Okay, cool. I am not lying. You doubt that? Yeah. Okay, that means I'm telling the truth. Yeah. Which I couldn't be because I was lying. I wasn't not lying, right? So then I'm not telling the truth. So I'm not telling the truth. Now what? Well, no, that doesn't. I mean, I didn't. Okay, look, I don't doubt the paradoxical shit. So now I already changed your mind. You can't help but think that paradox is ludicrous. Do you believe that? No, I'm going to be skeptical of that. There's no way out. So there are some things that we can't help but believe. Do you believe that you are watching me speak? Whoever the me is, you all pretty much know my fake name of Dan Green. You all know my avatar name of Deconverted Man. And if you know my actual name, or at least what I told you is my actual name, but can you stop believing in that? Can you decide that I'm a robot? No. Can you decide that your perception of me is so flawed that this isn't really real? That all of this is all in your head and nowhere else? Can you suddenly believe that's the case? No. Why? Because that's not how our brains work. I show you a thing and you recognize what that thing is. You're able to identify it and say, that's what that is. And I say, no, you're wrong. I have to prove to you that you're wrong. It's not enough for me just to claim that you're wrong. But at some level in our brain, because our brains are amazing that we can do this, if you don't want to believe, there's nothing I or anyone else can do that will ever change your mind. Only you can decide to change your mind. But can you really decide that? Or are you trapped? Is your mind blocking you from that? I don't know. Is there a way to know? Probably some psychological ways. Some neurologists out there knows if we can figure that out. Or maybe we'll never figure it out. I don't know. And I wonder that. And I question that to myself like a lot, not all the time, because I have other things that are in my brain, but can I choose to believe that logic doesn't work anymore? No. Why do I believe logic works? Well, I've seen it work. I have the formulas. I studied the damn thing. Yeah, it works. I apply it, and it freaking works every time I do it. Well, maybe tomorrow it might not work. Well, I'll deal with that tomorrow. But it's worked so far, so that's pretty good. Can you really change what you believe? Doesn't seem like it. But also, are you forced then to always have the same ideas? Maybe, or maybe not. Have you tried to believe in God? Well, maybe you did, maybe you didn't. Maybe you don't see a value in trying to do that because you don't have access to the sort of thing that would make it worth your time and energy. And so what would do that? Well, for me, I can tell you. Somebody has to give me a valid and sound argument. Then I think, hey, yeah, that thing sounds worthwhile. I'll spend my time and energy investigating it. If they can't do that, show me a test. Hey, look, we did this test. This is this thing. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I'll look into that. Or here's this empirical evidence. Okay, that's something. Now I'll look into it. But if I don't get any of those, then I don't need to spend my time and energy on it. Maybe it's true. It's possible. Maybe it's something interesting. Maybe it's something that I'm a little less if I don't have it. But I haven't been given sufficient cause to go after it. So you're going to have to give me one of those things. And until you do, I'm free to be skeptical of your conclusions. And I've said many times, we all should be skeptical because I don't know of another system. I don't know of a fourth thing that I could add to that list of demands. But many people think that they have that fourth thing. And for many people, that fourth thing is an experience. Talk to that caffeine guy and the DMT bullshit. And anyone that comes on my chat and does that, I'm going to ban. But at any rate, I'm going to have to make sure that nobody's, not now that I brought it up, but you know what I mean. If I'm talking about something else and, don't derail, in other words. Okay. Because that happened during a talk I was having. So is this even asking whether or not I can choose what I believe? The experience, right, sorry. So experience. I've had this experience. You haven't, and that means something. Until you've had this experience, you don't understand it. True. But because I've had this experience proves something else. No. False. That's not how it works. And the problem is, it's an unfalsifiable statement. Until you have had this thing happen to you, you will not believe that this is also true. And that's, of course, what I did with caffeine. Said, well, it's the lobsterist. If you don't read my lobsterist book that is on my about page, I've linked it in videos. It's, if you want it and you don't have the link, I'll give the link to you. I've talked about it. It's an actual thing to read. It's stupid. It's funny, I think. But if you haven't read it, then you don't experience LOD, L-O-D. And you say, well, I read it, but I didn't experience LOD. And I say, then you didn't really read it. And you say, yes, of course I did. And you could even have a video of you reading it out loud. And I say, oh, but that didn't count because of whatever. And people do this, moving the goalpost. You'll see it in fake martial arts. I was listening to Joe Rogan talk about this stuff where the person will go, and the other person will fall down. Well, why? Because everyone else fell down. So they fell down. That's why. And he's like, do it on me. And the guy's like, do it on me. Hit me in the neck or whatever. I want it. And they won't do it because they know it's bullshit. At some level, they've got to know that it's bullshit. And the one guy, and this has been shown, this clip is beautiful, where the guy that did this thing, he does it, and the guy, it doesn't do anything. He's like, yeah, well, the thing is, I wasn't really feeling strong that moment, or maybe he had his tongue on the top of his mouth, because when you do that, this doesn't work. Or if you move your toe up and down, then it won't work. You can't. And it's like, how many things because we could have him stick out his tongue and have no shoes on, and you could try it again and it still won't work. Then what are you going to say then? Because there's always a way for you to scapegoat it and move the goalpost back. And this is why the test part is so important. If we can't, the conversation I had a couple with another theist where I said, if it's testable, they were talking about that they had messed with summoning spirits or whatever. I said, is that testable? If I perform the same ritual and nothing happens, what should that tell us? I asked this person. I said, well, it came to the bottom of the line was the answer is no, it wasn't testable because the spirits all behave like people. So maybe they don't want to show up that day, or maybe they're hiding, or maybe they know that you're testing them, and because of that, they're not going to come out and play because they don't want anyone else to know that they're real. Like, wouldn't one spirit somewhere behave the same every time? No, because that would make it testable. And we have to have a clause in that test that says this means it failed. I opened the box and there's nothing in there. That means that it failed. I opened it and there's a crystal in there. That means that it didn't fail. Okay, so I called to the spirits and I think that they can move this crystal and the box is closed. I think they can also open the box. And I go, okay, spirits, put the crystal in the box. This is something I believe that you can do. And I really ask them. And I also say, well, it doesn't matter how I ask them. I have to ask them this. And I go, okay, it's been a while. I gave them some time. Open the box. There's not going to be a crystal in there. Guaranteed, unless some other human put a crystal in there. It's not going to happen. The spirits can't do that if they're even a thing, which, because I did that test and they didn't do it, then I could say to some reasonable degree of certainty that spirits that can open boxes and move crystals and are willing to do that when I ask don't exist. They failed the test. So they don't exist. But can I change my belief and decide that they do? I don't think so. But I'm not going to play around with my brain to find out either. That's pretty scary if I could. And it's also kind of scary that I'm not willing to, maybe. But I have to have a sufficient reason. And maybe you say, well, that's not fair because you've never had this experience. You don't know that. Only I know that. Might have had that experience, but now I view that experience differently than I did at the time. And from your perspective, that experience still matters to you. You still view it in the same way, but I don't. So I don't view that fourth way as a valid way to get to the truth. So, do you have the empirical evidence? Do you have the repeatable test? Do you have the valid and sound argument? You got to have one of those. If you don't, we have to be skeptical of the conclusion. We have to doubt it. We don't have a choice. Okay, so that's my thoughts on that one. Thank you for sticking with me at this point in the video. I am now done with the actual talking of the video, and now I feel that I owe chat some of my attention. So you can stop the video now if you don't care and don't want to hear me talk to them. And if you are in chat now and I don't see you post a comment under this video later, I will hunt you down with the lobsters. That's an ad Valium. Okay, so let's see what Okay, so this one person started to study Wicca with the goal of explaining why it was wrong, and then changed their religious preferences uh, with the in, institution I was living in, or with the instruction. I'm not sure how they meant to put that. Well, I have many that I'm wondering if this is the person that's appeared before in comments or my chat sometimes that has talked a little bit about being a Wiccan or whatever. Well, the question is always, is it testable? Whatever the claim is, can we test it? So, there's some spell that does something. So we'd have to narrow down what the claim is. This spell does blank. And so if it is testable, if it's defined down to very strict parameters that we're going to have to say, we can't just say this spell will make you feel better. That's too damn subjective. Has to be something more concrete. Can a spell levitate this object off of my hand? Oop, let's get it on my hand in a stable position. Can any ritual, any spell, any incantation, any whatever make this levitate? If not, okay, can the spells do anything that we could not otherwise explain by the natural world? And if not, maybe these spells are not really doing anything at all. So we'd have to ask the question if it's testable or not, and be willing to say, no, they're not testable, and or be willing to say once the test has been done and failed that doesn't work, therefore that spell isn't real, and maybe even the whole system isn't real either. Yeah, let's see. And there's the person that has to get banned from the channel. So let's go ahead and remove Kelly. Or should I? Oh, no, okay. Okay. Well, let's see, I don't know. Yeah, I think I will. So, Kelly gone. So let's see. Hide user on this channel. So Kelly, because you have decided to talk about DMT, you are now gone from my channel. And everybody and anybody that decides to talk about that, when I'm not talking about that specifically, which I wasn't at that time when you made that chat message, will be banned. So all friends of Kathy, you're going to get banned. And if I have to, I'll find a way to make legal precedent against Kathy and friends for harassment. I'm not fucking joking. Okay, let's see. Oh, and also everybody that cares about me and likes my stuff. If somebody decides to start talking about DMT in the chat, ignore them. Don't respond to them at all. That will help. We're not going to feed the trolls. So, okay, let's see. So, other than that, we didn't really have much going on in chat. And we had another, I'm just going to assume that's a troll. So, they're not going to be around anymore. And that person's just gone. So, don't even joke about this fucking DMT thing. I'm tired of it. Period. Not joking. I will ban you. Period. End of story. I don't care how long I've known you either. Don't bring this shit up during when I'm talking about some stuff like this. I brought it up. That's fine. You can talk about it once I brought it up. But I'm tired of this derailing bullshit that Kathy started. He is a troll, and he was banned from my channel for that reason. and all of his friends, and anyone else that comes in here and does that shit, is going to get banned. And if I have to, I will find out if I can do anything legal, and I will do it. And I am not to be trifled with. So cut it out right now. All right, so that's it. I guess we're done talking about this stuff. And yeah, thanks for watching. That's it.